afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sandy Wolf, and I lead Strategic Relations and Membership at your San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of our CEO and President, Marina Gonzalez, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for our webinar in collaboration with the U.S. Small Business Administration, which has about over $16 billion in grants to shuttered venues to be administered by the SBA's Office of Disaster Assistance. This webinar is part one of our new small business series titled Navigating the Small Business Landscape. So I hope you do enjoy it. I want to thank Mr. David Elizondo, Deputy District Director of the U.S. Small Business Administration at the San Antonio District Office, for taking time out of his busy schedule to be with us virtually this afternoon. Good afternoon, David.
Good afternoon, Dr. Wolf. Thank you for the introduction. Can you hear me first off?
I can. Let me get to, before I actually introduce you, I just wanted to say hello. Many of our members have been adversely impacted by the pandemic and are definitely eager to learn a little bit more about this new grant program. So just a few housekeeping before we get started. If we are definitely utilizing the Zoom webinar for today's discussion, it will be recorded. If you'd like to submit a question, please use the Q&A feature on your screen in the chat. And we will do our best to incorporate questions from the audience as time permits. So let me introduce you to our special guest. This is Mr. David Elizondo, and he's like I said, he's the Deputy District Director for the U.S. Small Business Administration right here in San Antonio. For those of you that may not know, the SBA was created in 1953 as an independent agency of the federal government to aid, counsel, assist, and protect the interests of small business concerns, to preserve free competitive enterprise, and to maintain and strengthen the overall economy of our nation, which are right in line with what the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber does. In his role, Mr. Elizondo works with SBA lenders, resource partners, small businesses in the 55-county region of Central and South Texas, big area, helping to facilitate information, training, and assistance to the local small business community. He originally joined SBA as the branch manager for SBA Corpus Christi, where he oversaw operations in the 7-county region, so a little bit bigger now. Prior to joining SBA, he was a program director for Veterans Business Outreach at the University of Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. We appreciate all the work that you've done to help our veterans. I know that you've also provided innovative and entrepreneurial leadership for personnel transitioning from the military service to civilian careers, and you focused on small business development, business ownership, and entrepreneurial development for military communities, which makes you perfect for this role. You actually served in the United States Air Force as well for more than 4 years, multiple overseas assignments, and successfully completed two tours in the Middle East. So thank you again for your service there. Mr. Elizondo has his BBA with a major in computer information systems, graduating magna cum laude, and a master's in MBA from University of Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. So I'll now turn it over to Mr. Elizondo for his presentation. Mr. Elizondo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf, and good afternoon, everyone. I know time is of the essence, and thank you for the warm introduction there. Today, the presentation will mainly consist of the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant. I know a lot of folks are eager to learn more about the program. Historically speaking, there's not a lot of grant opportunities for for-profit small businesses. Normally, the SBA focuses on nonprofits to provide grant services, but as we know, the grant, or I should say the pandemic, has caused a lot of stress for small businesses. And under the Trump administration, now the Biden administration, there's been multiple programs that have been released to help small businesses pivot their small business or start a small business or recoup during this time. Little did we know this pandemic was going to be so long. Most of us thought maybe 6 months, 8 months out from the start we would be in the clear, but here we are a little over a year later and we're still in the middle of it. So to help small businesses, there's new programs that are being launched by the SBA. More specifically, there's been data collected and to show the small businesses that were most severely impacted. And indeed, we're going to go over some of these today, but theatrical performance arenas, centers, restaurants, those have been on the categories of severely impacted. And so for today's presentation, I'll briefly talk about the Paycheck Protection Program. I'll talk about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, how that differs than the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant that's about to go live here in the next couple of days. So when the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber reached out, they said, when can we do this presentation? I said, let's do it before April 8th, because I want to make sure you all are geared and ready to go when it comes to April 8th, 2 days from now, when the portal does go live for the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant. So with that being said, you're no longer going to see my face. I'm going to transition over to the screen here. We're going to go over the presentation of what I have. So let's go with share screen. All right, do y'all see the presentation? Give me a thumbs up if you do. Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, so there's my contact information first and foremost. So I believe they're going to share this PowerPoint with you all afterwards, but nonetheless, if you want to have my contact information, there it is. It's david.elizondo@sba.gov. That is my office number that's being forwarded to my government cell phone. So Uncle Sam knows where I am 24/7, even on the weekends. So if you have any questions, I would say the best way to get a hold of me is shoot me an email. 9 times out of 10, what I do is I engage my team also to assist with the response. One thing about me is I hate to tell someone no and not provide a solution. And so that's where most of the times, if you have a real technical question, like if it pertains to you exactly, I'd like to research it a little more in depth before providing a valid response. So write that down. Okay, so since this pandemic started, there's been multiple acts that have been passed to help small businesses. The first one was the CARES Act that was passed in April. Then there was the Flexibility Act that gave some flexibility for like the Paycheck Protection Program. Instead of using it in 8 weeks, now you have 24 weeks to use it. The other big thing too was certain small businesses were not eligible to apply, nonprofits. Now certain nonprofits and other small businesses are able to apply. Then you fast forward to the Economic Aid Act that was passed, and now the American Rescue Plan Act that's been passed. So lots of initiatives by the presidential administration. Again, the main goal is to help small businesses. Today, I have a total of 100 slides to go over. I'm totally kidding. I understand there's something called death by PowerPoint. I can assure you I'm going to be sticking straight to the facts. And so it's only 14 slides, folks, and we'll go over today. So before I go over the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant, I wanted to give you all some insight on the latest act that has been passed, which is the American Rescue Plan Act. So here it says in late February, March 2021, the Biden-Harris administration and SBA took steps to ensure inclusiveness and equitable relief for America's small mom and pop businesses that anchor our neighborhoods and help families build wealth. So we have a statistic on our website that every 2 out of 3 jobs are from small businesses. So we understand that small businesses are the backbone of the economy. On March 11th, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan Act into law, and also the Triple P Extension Act of 2021. So if we were having this conversation a week ago, I would have been telling you that the deadline to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program was March 31st, but now that has been extended to May 31st. So for those that are still contemplating about applying for the Paycheck Protection Program, you still have the opportunity to apply. Okay. Me, I'm a very visual person, so I think SBA did a great job with kind of showing you all the differences of the programs that we have here. So what you should be seeing on your screen right now are the different types of loan programs, such as the Paycheck Protection Program, SBA Debt Relief. So if you had an existing 7A, 504 microloans, initially there was a 6-month relief if you had those payments where you didn't have to make payments for 6 months, and that has since been extended again. Technically, the Paycheck Protection Program is a loan, but as long as 60% or more is used for payroll purposes, then it will be forgiven, right? So in other words, if you only use 30% for payroll and the rest for other expenses, then it is a loan that you have to repay. Now, what's new under the pandemic, under this COVID relief, is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, also known as EIDL, the Targeted EIDL Advance, and what's about to come online as well as the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant and the Restaurant Revitalization Grant. So the EIDL Advance, when it first went live, there was a lot of confusion as to what that entailed. And so we eventually said, look, it's a grant program up to $10,000. So if you're a small mom and pop shop, it's you and one other employee that's a W-2 employee, then you qualify for probably $2,000. If you are located in a low income area, under the new supplemental targeted EIDL advance, you're now eligible to receive up to $10,000. So that being said, is if you receive $2,000 initially, and now you have the option to receive an additional $8,000 as long as you meet the criteria and you're in a low income area. The Shuttered Venues Operators Grant is different than the EIDL. With the EIDL, you applied directly through SBA's website. With the Shuttered Venues Operators Grants, you're applying directly through grants.gov. And for those that are in the nonprofit world, that should sound very familiar to you all, grants.gov, because that's where you apply to receive grant programs from SBA, USDA, and other federal agencies as well. Okay, so jumping straight into the facts. The Shuttered Venues Operators Grant, $16 billion in total, with a maximum of $10 million per entity. So this is where I'm gonna jump to the website now. Hopefully y'all can see this. Are y'all seeing the website now? Yes. Perfect. So just wanted to make sure. Our website has the latest information. If you go to sba.gov/SVOG, the landing page should be this here. And the best information that I can give to you all is this link right here called Frequently Asked Questions. This is updated quite frequently. So you click on it, it should be a PDF file. It loads up. Okay, it says Frequently Asked Questions. So the biggest question that we are receiving at a local office is, how do I know if I'm eligible? Okay, on SBA's website, it shows who's eligible. Let me scroll up. So you click on who can apply? And so basically what I'm showing you today is the same thing. So live venue operators or promoters, theatrical producers, live performing arts organizations, motion picture theater operators, relevant museum operators, zoos, aquariums who meet specific criteria, talent reps, and a maximum of 5 business entities related via affiliation. So there was a scenario that was posed recently. I own a hall that I normally host bingo. You're able, as the owner of this hall, transition to a dance floor or something. So I think that's actually on the frequently asked questions, how you can transition or pivot your business to a different business model. So that would not probably qualify for the SVOG. But with that being said, is I don't want you all to feel that you shouldn't apply. You know, the best thing to do is check to see if you're eligible to apply, number one, and go into grants.gov and apply. So the biggest thing is here is must have been in operations as of February 29th of 2020. So if you started business March 1st of 2020, unfortunately, you would not qualify for the SVOG grant. And as I mentioned early on, 2 days from now is when the portal is slated to open up. So how do I prepare for that? That's a great thing to know. So unlike the IDLE, where you went to SBA's website and you submitted your information, the SVOG grant is going to be different. You must create a profile first under SAM, Systems for Order Management. So sam.gov, go ahead and start creating your profile like today. The question I often get as well on my end is, David, can you or your staff member help us apply for this grant? And unfortunately, we cannot, because that's kind of showing preferential treatment to a particular entity. So how do we know what we're doing in San Antonio if the other 67 district offices across the United States are doing the same thing? But remember what I said early on, I hate to tell you no without providing a solution. So we have something called our Sba Resource Partners. The most common one known here in San Antonio is the UTSA Small Business Development Center, but there's also the Women's Business Center at Launch SA. There's also SCORE, and lastly, the Veterans Business Outreach Center. These 4 resource partners of SBA can indeed help you to apply, to get your profile created first off on sam.gov, but also apply for the grants. So I want to reiterate that. sam.gov is a priority first. In order to even apply for the grant, you must create a profile on sam.gov. Then you're going to go to grants.gov to actually apply for the grants itself. What's the max amount? So per entity, it's $5 million. So if you have multiple entities under one LLC, you can apply for each up to $10 million. So I want you to keep that in mind too. Now here, if in operation on January 1st, 2020, I'm sorry, 2019, 45% of the 2019 gross earned revenue is how it's going to be calculated. So again, I'm going to reference back the website here. It breaks it down for you. Okay. So if you were in business prior to January 1st, 2019, this is how you're going to calculate it. Now, if you started small business in 2019, before the pandemic, after January 1st, there's another way to calculate as well, which is your average monthly gross earned revenue for each full month you were operating, multiplied by 6 or up to $10 million, whatever is less. Okay. So again, going back to the previous slide, if you started a small business prior to February 29th, this is applicable. If you started on March 1st of 2020, unfortunately, you do not qualify for the SVOG. Initially, when the SVOG announcement was first made, the announcement was if you applied for the second draw of Triple P, you were not eligible to apply for the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant. However, under the new Economic Aid Relief Act, and it's further enhanced with the American Rescue Plan Act, you can indeed apply for both. Okay, so that's great. It's great to hear because now you have the opportunity to, if you have not already applied for a second round of Triple P, which is again until May 31st, and you can apply April 8th for the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant. The two are, for lack of better words, intertwined. So if you qualify for a total of $100,000, let's just say you only received $80,000 of the Triple P, you're still going to get an additional $20,000 of assistance from the SVOG. So remember, if you use a Triple P 60% or more for payroll purposes, it's going to be forgiven. The point being here is you cannot get $100,000 for SVOG and another $100,000 for the Triple P. One of the questions that will be asked on the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant is, have you applied for the Triple P? Yes. Okay, what was the amount for? And there are cross-checking by looking at your Social Security, your EIN number. So that's good news. So whenever the announcement first went live for the SVOG, they were saying, no, unfortunately, you cannot apply if you receive the second draw of Triple P, but now you can. And this little chart here, I think best illustrates, if, when type of scenario. So if you applied for the Triple P, you may apply if received the loan prior to December 27th. The amount will be deducted from the SVOG. And again, I really would like to emphasize to check out SBA's website because they're almost on a daily basis updating the content of how to apply, who's going to be first priority, who's considered second priority. So for the first 14 days of the grant, entities that suffered a 90% or greater revenue loss between April 20 through December 20 due to COVID are going to be priority. If you suffer 70% or more, you're considered second priority. If you suffer 25% or more, you're third priority. And if you do not really qualify for all that, then you're under the supplemental funding as well. Okay. Under SBA's website, which I don't think my PowerPoint does cover, the other question we're getting frequently at our district office level is, what can I use the funds for? And so on SBA's website, it best illustrates what you can use it for. So payroll costs, rent payments, utilities, scheduled mortgage, workers' protection, state and local taxes, just kind of glancing through this, advertising, production, transportation, capital expenditures can be used. So what can I not use the grant for? A lot of it is speculative, such as, can I buy real estate? Maybe with the purpose of flipping it. So you may recall under SBA traditional programs such as 504, 7A, you cannot buy homes and flip them. That's purely speculative, or what we used to say passive income. For something like that, I would highly recommend talking to mortgage companies if your intent is for real estate. But other reasons why you cannot use a grant for is make payments on loans originated after February 20th, make investments with it. So I cannot, get $100,000 grant and let me go on to, I don't know, Facebook or Tesla and invest in some stocks. That's a no-go. Okay. The other question that we're getting is documentation. So with the SVOG, it severely differs than the EIDL. And the biggest thing here is you must maintain documentation if you do indeed receive the SVOG. And here it says they must maintain, retain employment records for 4 years following the receipt of the grant, and retain all other records for 3 years. For the EIDL, there's not so much scrutiny, but for the SVOG, there are wanting to see this information as well. Okay. So transitioning a little bit over to the American Rescue Plan Act. So again, this was signed into effect as of March 11th. The biggest things here are the supplemental targeted EIDL advance for those severely impacted, the restaurant revitalization fund. So this is kind of a hint to the chamber. If you want to do another follow-up presentation regarding the restaurant revitalization to talk more in depth about that, I'll gladly do so. The Community Navigator pilot program, that's something that a lot of people are starting to inquire about as well, is you can receive a grant from SBA if you are assisting small businesses recover from COVID. So this actually would be potentially applicable to the chamber as well. So more information to come on that. So for the latest information about the Community Navigator pilot program, sba.gov/navigators. Okay, so again, kind of re-emphasizing the key takeaways here is the loan programs and how they differ than the grant program. So Paycheck Protection Program, remember, it is a loan unless 60% or more is used for payroll purposes. If you had an additional 7A 504 loan program, there was an SBA debt relief for 6 months of your payments being waived. The EIDL advance, the supplemental targeted EIDL advance, it's the SVOG, and soon the restaurant revitalization grant are all grant programs under SBA. And again, the main mission here is to help small businesses that were severely impacted by the pandemic to get back on their feet. Early on, I mentioned the resource partners. So I know a lot of folks are probably very curious of, I'm not too familiar with sam.gov. I've never applied for a grant before. How do I create a profile? How do I navigate grants.gov once the application does go live April 8th? And so I mentioned the SBA Resource Partners. So what you see in front of you now are all nonprofit resource centers that receive grant monies from SBA to provide technical assistance to you all, the small business owners, at no charge. The largest component, which SBDC has about 1,000 locations nationwide, one here in San Antonio, in Austin, Laredo, Eagle Pass, Victoria, San Angelo. The Women's Business Center that's located downtown as well at the Central Public Library under Launch SA. The Veterans Business Outreach Center. So if you are a veteran-owned small business owner, you do have that at your option too. Now they are located in Edinburgh, Texas, so they're not local, but they still can assist you. We have two what we call Veterans Business Outreach Centers in Texas. So if you draw a line from El Paso through Austin down to Houston, anything below is covered by the VBOC in Edinburgh. Anything north is located in Arlington. And then SCORE is a unique nonprofit resource partner of SBA because they are the only ones that can also assist nonprofits. So if you are a for-profit owner, but also have a nonprofit component to your small business model, SCORE can also assist as well. So they are located in our district office, but they also have an office right next to the Women's Business Center at the Central Public Library. And if there's any folks on the call, I know it probably not, but those are in the Austin market. There is an Austin SCORE location as well. So all these resources are at your arsenal at no charge. So instead of having to pay a consultant hundreds if not thousands of dollars with your business plan, with how do I market my small business, I need help with my financial projections, I need help pivoting my small business, all these resources can help you at no charge. Furthermore, if you want to receive the latest updates, we have a public information officer that's doing email blast whenever there's something that's the latest and greatest coming out. Highly encourage you all to subscribe to our electronic newsletter. So if you go to sba.gov/updates, it's going to ask for your zip code so you can get the latest information. So once the portal does go live for SVOG, whenever the restaurant revitalization funds come out, that's where you can get the latest information. So we're different in the sense of we don't have a database such as Constant Contacts where we can do an email blast and we can see everyone's email address. It's more of everyone opted into the federal government database to start receiving emails from us. And most importantly, if you have any questions, again, you have my email address in the beginning, but that's our general inbox. We also have our main office number at 403-5900. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. So if you have any questions regarding SVOG, EIDL, Triple P, those are some additional links there as well that we've included. Again, that's my contact information there. So if you have any general questions, I'll be more than glad to respond to your questions as well. But again, pertaining to the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant, continue looking over this here. As a matter of fact, towards the bottom of the page, we have video tutorials. So if you're a very visual person like I am, you can see application portal overview. How do I register in sam.gov? So if you do not have an appointment with a resource partner for the next week or so, and again, the portal does go live in 2 days, this would be a good starting point. You go to sam.gov entity registration training. Very informative. I think the video, I believe, is 15 minutes. And then there's your eligibility forms right there. So 2 things to reference here, which is number 1, the presentation, what I just went over. I am more than confident the chamber will send this presentation out. But number 2, by going to sba.gov/SVOG, this is where you'll find the landing page for the Shuttered Venues Operators Grants. So let's see, do I have anything else? Okay.
We do have some questions. Mr. Elizondo, thank you so much. It's very informative, a lot of information. If there's one thing that you can take away from this, it's to go to sba.gov if we're not going to answer all your questions today. So I do have a couple for you. First of all, is this presentation available in Spanish?
Let me circle back with my public information officer to see if I can obtain said information for you.
Okay.
So let me make mental note of that now before I forget.
Yeah. So we did have someone that was asking if it was available in Spanish, so that would be super helpful. Is there a deadline to apply for this grant, or are the funds awarded on a first come, first serve based on the priority?
First come, first serve basis.
And
so
until
the
they run
sooner
out?
you can apply, the sooner your chances are to receive the grants.
Okay, great. And then also, let's see. I know that I do have a lot of questions, some really kind of specific ones, but I guess the biggest question they kind of go into a group is there a relationship that you can have with a representative at the SBA that will help you kind of navigate through some of these things? Some of the questions I have were that the form 4506T, the IRS form, is very confusing. Do we know when they're going to ask for this? Is it during the application process? When will they ask for a proposed budget? Questions like that. Is there a person that they can bounce those off of, or what's the best way to
Absolutely.
get?
So while we really can't dive into the application process, because again, you're competing for grants essentially, but the SBA Resource Partners can indeed leverage that information.
So your
And
UTSA,
that's
your launch
right.
essay.
Right, exactly. So the Small Business Development Center and the Women's Business Center and SCORE as well, you definitely want to know those 3 resources. There was a very good question that was asked early on when this first went live, and I really want to clarify this now, is there an appeal process? Is there a reconsideration? So like the EIDL, there was. I was denied initially, and normally you had about 6 months to resolve that issue, whether you had a lower credit score or something was pending. And quite frankly, I'm going to go with no for the SVOG because it's a different platform. You're going through grants.gov. You're not going through SBA's website. And historically speaking, whenever you apply for a grant through grants.gov, it's the information that you submitted on the first go. So you really want to make sure that the information you are indeed submitting is as accurate as possible. And if you need another set of eyes to review it, the SBDC, the SCORE, the Women's Business Center folks can review that information for you. Of course, the 4506Ts are tax transcripts to make sure that you're not in debt to the federal government or anything like that.
Right.
So that's why we want people to submit that information.
Yeah, the gentleman that he sent some great questions about everything from, is it okay to send pictures as proof of video equipment and things like that, but that would best be answered through one of your partners.
Right. So normally with pictures through grants.gov, they're not asking for pictures. I think it's all the forms that they want submitted.
Receipts and things.
Right.
Yeah. And that would be the same for if there's quarterly statements that hadn't been vetted by an accountant. Can they just send those in?
Yes, they can. So you don't necessarily have to have an accountant, because let's just say I'm a sole
Not
prop
everybody
and I
has
do
one.
my taxes myself, TurboTax or whatever. No affiliation to them. So they can submit that information.
Okay, good. I'm trying to think of, should I maintain employment records if
Yes.
I'm approved through the SVOG?
Absolutely. On SBA's website, on the SVOG, it does state that you must maintain your employment records in case there is an audit that does take place, a few years down the road. At least you can show documentation of what the SVOG grant was utilized for.
Okay. And then my last question was, Really, and I think you answered this, just for those of it that might have joined later, how to prepare before the portal opens. And can you give us that website again?
Yes, so you want to start now. If you think you qualify for the Shutter Venues Operators Grant, you want to start applying now, or creating your
Getting
profile.
everything.
Most importantly, is going to sam.gov, look at the tutorial. So if I was in your shoes, I owned an old theater that was built in the 20s and it's fixed seating. How do I prepare for this? Is go to sba.gov website, look at the YouTube online tutorial video of how do I create a profile in SAM. 2 days from now, the applications or the portal does go live. Make sure you're filling out the information there. So you do have technically about 2 days to talk to an Sba Resource Partner to make sure that all your documents are squared away. I mean, I would be on the front of the pack applying for this, because if the funds are gone, we don't know. I mean, we didn't know with the Triple P either, if August 8th was the last time that Triple P was going to be available. So August 8th was the original deadline. Then they reopened it. March 31st is a new deadline. Well, then, there was a lot of uncertainty. Is it going to be extended? We weren't too sure. And then last minute, March 11th, it's been extended. So we don't know if that's going to be the case for the SULGs. And quite frankly, with
Quicker the better, right? The more
yeah,
prepared
yes,
you
yes,
are
yes.
now. Mhm.
And then especially with the restaurant revitalization funds going live, they're allocating a certain amount of money to the SVOG. But once that's gone, maybe the next focus is going to be the restaurant revitalization fund. And so, we don't
We're
want to
ready for
speculate.
that for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
want that one.
Yeah, and by no means I don't want to speculate and mislead folks and say, yes, it's going to be extended, or in addition to the $16 billion that's been allocated for the SULG, there's going to be more down the road. There is a small possibility, yes, but there's also a possibility of no.
Yeah, I know that our restaurants and small businesses definitely need this kind of help, and we would love to have more, not only for our venues, but also because that's a huge thing, for San Antonio is all of our hospitality. So, and then our
Absolutely.
bars and restaurants, our tourism. I mean, that's the one that I think those are the groups that took kind of the biggest hit,
Mhm.
as well as some of our retail, people aren't getting out. So we appreciate your time today, David. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I don't have any more questions. I don't see any more in the chat. Let me just double check. I do see one in the Q&A. Let's see. Oh, if you do get approved for funds, how quickly will they tell you? Good question, Blanca.
So, Blanca, you want to make sure that the email notification is coming from an SBA.gov website. There's going to be a lot of people out there that are trying to scam, trying to fish.
Good
First
point.
and foremost, you really want to make sure it's from an SBA.gov website. And I could say right now, the Office of Disaster Assistance is already spending up their team to try to get a turnaround time as quickly as possible. So I don't want to give you a specific time frame. It could be a couple weeks, but just ensure that it's from a .gov website. Make sure you respond to that, because there's been people that received the targeted idle advance, for example, and they received the email 2 weeks ago, and they didn't check their inbox, their emails. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was already approved for this. So keep an eye out for a SBA.gov email if you are indeed approved.
And check your spam and your junk mail too, just in case.
Absolutely.
Every week you have to do that. So
Yep.
Mr. Elizondo, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I want to let our audience know again that we will post a link to this presentation on our social media channels immediately following the webinar. I do want to thank our members who tuned in today. I hope you found this webinar informative and you have plenty of resources. We look forward to seeing you again at our next webinar. So have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks again, David. Appreciate your
All right.
time.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf. Y'all have a great
Thanks.
one.
Bye.